because of the development in psychology and advancement in technology. So having just one reference and one meaning, one objectified and one objective meaning behind a play did not seem to entice the minds of the audience. That's why they tried to break this, the traditions of realism by complicating, things, and by creating layers of meanings for the audience and for the readers. And that is why they produced, expressionist plays, symbolist plays, expressionist plays. These, kinds of plays, as a matter of fact, try to defy the set of one meaning, one meaning play. So postmodern playwrights tried both to supersede the theatrical techniques of modernism and also build on it. So when we move to postmodernism, we find that the playwrights who appeared after the Second World War tried to retain some of these techniques that were used by the modernist writers. They tried to revolt against the superstition of realism, because they try to use both schools, the realistic school as well as the modernist schools, and retain some elements of both in order to introduce a new kind of theater that is composite of more than one school. So instead of dealing with realism or its opposite, they depicted what we call multiple realities. You will see that there is a very interesting term coined by Howard Barker, which he called the wrestling theater. He said that we introduce audience with wrestling facts, with wrestling realities, that each of the audience is going to have their own perspective and their own point of view. So instead of presenting one unified truth or one unified fact or one unified realism, they introduce multiple realities, and each of the audience is free to focus on the aspect they want. The first of these schools that we're going to focus on is the Angry Young Man theater. And this theater, let me start with a quotation by Ribalato in his famous book, And All That, when he states that the old era becomes exclusively characterized by the absence of anger and the new era by its presence. So those playwrights and writers appeared after the Second World War were charged with their sense of anger and dissatisfaction with what's going on. And we'll have to know why they were, angry and provoked all the time. So various British novelists and playwrights who appeared after the 1950s showed their dissatisfaction with established socio-political order of their country. Their impatience and resentment were especially aroused by the way they perceived as the hypocrisy of the mediocrity of the upper and middle classes. Now, those people felt that they are marginalized and they are still, dominated by class distinction, stratums and roots. So they felt that they are completely dominated by names and families and rich people, etc. So their anger also came as a result of the collapse of nationalism after the Second World War. As you know, nationalism appeared as a filling component that filled the gap after the collapse of religion and science in the Victorian age. So after the First World War, nationalism appeared to be the filling thing that filled the vacuum that was left after as I said, the collapse of religion and science, and especially after the appearance of the British Empire to be one of the strongest empires in the world. So most of people were filled with this sense of nationalism. But after the Second World War, they discovered that they were highly deceived by by this cult of nationalism, because nationalism, as a matter of fact, was just um, uh, a kind of term, a kind of illusion that were deceived, and people discovered that nationalism can never replace humanism. And that is why you find that most of the artists, playwrights, novelists, poets, even painters who appeared after the Second World War resented something called nationalism, because they felt that nationalism was an antonym of humanism. So this is a very interesting quotation by John Osborne in his famous play Look Back in Anger, when Jimmy says that people of our generation are not able to die for good causes any longer, because there aren't any good causes, brave causes left. So because of the death of these causes, the nationalistic and the chivalric causes that used to entice people and encourage them to move forward and to accept the challenge, these causes are not there any longer. Why? Because life itself changed, politics changed, art itself changed, so everything has changed, and that's why there are no good causes any longer. So who are these people? They were a new breed of intellectuals who were mostly of working class or lower middle class origin. These people appeared because, as I said, because they felt that they are marginalized. They felt that the high class people dominate the scene and they are deprived of the opportunities which were offered for those people. So though some of these people were graduates of red brick universities. Red brick universities are universities which are established by the governments, and these universities are with the low qualifications, not like the elitist universities like Oxford or Cambridge University, Lancaster University, and other universities. And that's why they were angry. Why? Because they were deprived of the chances to move on and to find jobs in the government. So they were asking, if these universities were originally established by the government, why are we deprived of the opportunities which were offered for the other people? So they shared an outspoken irreverence for the British class system, its traditional network of pedigree families, and the elitist Oxford and Cambridge universities. As I mentioned before, those people felt really offended and provoked because they saw that the political as well as the social scenes in the United Kingdom were dominated by families, rich families, which controlled the country for a long period of time, and opportunities were given for graduates of Oxford and Cambridge universities, while others were denied of the chance to find employment or find something. So they showed an equally uninhibited disdain of the drabness of the post-war welfare states, and their writings frequently expressed raw anger and frustration as the post-war reforms failed to meet exalted aspirations for genuine change. As if you remember, after the Second World War, the ruling, parties promised people a lot of things. They promised them to provide chances, promised them to make some reformations, to improve the situation, improve the life standards of people, but they all failed to do so because these were just kind of propagandas that they use in order to win the elections, as is the case with most of the countries. So this, as a matter of fact, provoked people, provoked the writers, and they tried to outspeak this kind of anger in their writings. So their plays typically feature a ruthless middle class, working class male protagonist like Jimmy in Look Back in Anger, who views society with scorn and sardonic humor. and may have conflicts with authority, but who is nevertheless preoccupied with the quest for upward mobility. So like Jimmy and Look Back and Anger, they always complain about their governments. They are not satisfied with things that are offered by their governments, things that unfortunately that they were promised, and they found themselves penniless. They found that without inspiration. They found that they got their degrees for nothing, and that's why they try to question all the principles and ideas that the government incarnates. As I said previously, the theater that appeared after the Second World War is a composite of different schools. So on top of these comedies, we find what we call the kitchen sink comedy, which appeared as a kind of reaction to the drawing room comedy. Drawing room comedy mainly focused on high-class people. And the kitchen sink comedy that appeared after the Second World War depicted the domestic life of the lower class people. That's why it is characterized with its, lower class language, with domestic affairs, with abrupt language that is, deprived of the sense of what we call ornamented language. Another trait of the genre was the use of everyday language and its ability to shock with its bluntness, because people who use this kind of comedy, as a matter of fact, they used everyday language, and at the same time, the language that was supposed to be decent in the previous genres in theater now turned to be down to earth, more shocking, more indecent, using some taboo expressions, etc. But later we will see in the other kind of theaters this trait is more developed. That is all for the Angry Young Theater. So theater of menace. The other school of theater that appeared after the Second World War is the theater of menace. And theater of menace is a term that was used to describe the plays written by Harold Pinter. The term itself originated from the theater of the absurd, because, as you know, Pinter was highly influenced by Samuel Beckett and his school of absurdism. So it is characterized by its elements of surprise, incongruity. What we mean by incongruity is the things that do not fit logically together. And I will give you some examples to clarify. Conflict and repetitiveness that often leads the audience to expect one thing while the other thing will happen, or the opposite will happen. As you know, some of these features were retained from the theater of the absurd, like repetitiveness. As you know, one of the features of the theater of the absurd is the cyclic structure. Writers, playwrights of the theater of the absurd often repeat some expressions, some ideas, some phrases. The purpose of repeating these is to show the boredom of life and routines that human beings follow in their everyday life, and again to show the meaninglessness of life. So again, when we say that the elements of incongruity, like if you remember in Harold Pinter's birthday party, the people appear with no background. We don't know anything about them, and they claim that it is Stalin's birthday, while we know that we are not sure whether it's Stalin's birthday or not, because he himself denied that. So whether it was his birthday or not his birthday, that was something that was not clear in the play. And as they started, cross-examining the central character with illogical questions. Like, for example, in one of the questions, they asked him, "Why did you kill your wife?" Right after that question, "Why didn't you get married?" So the confusion that they created with this kind of dialogue is just meant to, add to the mystery of their presence and at the same time with the thing that they stand for. So it signifies a kind of play in which a character or more feels the menacing presence, whether actual or imaginary, of some obscure and frightening force, power, or person. In most of the plays of Harold Pinter, he presented a kind of situation in which characters are in a place and there is a menacing power that lurks behind the scenes that tries to intrude and destroy their lives. So you see that in most of his plays, he is presenting a character who is entangled by this sense of being menaced all the time. That's why they don't feel safe at all, even when they are in a safe place, like Stanley, who ran away in a boarding house that was even not on the list, as they say, in a marginal place in a faraway city. He still felt that his life is not secure, that forces may come, and this is actually what happened, that McCain and Goldberg appeared and they cross-examined him and finally took him away. Why the word menace is used instead of threat? Because, as you know, menace is something implicit, and while threat is something physical and explicit. That's why they use the word menace in the plays of Harold Pinter. The other school is, as a matter of fact, as if you remember, again I mentioned at the beginning of the session, is that one of the schools that made its impact on all that appeared after the Second World War is the theater of cruelty, coined by Antonin Artaud in 1938, when he published his famous book, The Theater and Its Double. Playwrights appeared after the Second World War, like Edward Bohr, Thomas Stoppard, Bryony Lavery, and some others. They tried to incarnate the doctrines of the theater of cruelty. So, Antonin believed what? Believed that civilization had turned humans into sick and repressed creatures, and that the true function of the theater was to rid humanity of these repressions and liberate each individual's instinctual energy. You remember that one of the basic elements of the theater, especially in tragedies, is to create the element of catharsis, and catharsis is supposed to rid humans of this, these oppressed feelings of pity and fear. So, with the more advanced civilizations and urbanized life, you find that people get more repressed, more depressed. Psychological problems and psychological diseases started to surface. So people are supposed to go to the theater in order to be, purified of these, especially if they could achieve the element of catharsis. And that is why, in order to increase this element of pity and fear, we have to present what? We have to present playwrights, have to present, more violent actions on the stage in order to what? In order to accelerate this purging and cathartical impact on the audience. So what he did is that he proposed removing the barrier of the stage between performance and audience and producing mythic spectacles that would include verbal incantations, groans and screams, pulsating light effects, and oversized stage puppets and props. What he did is that he proposed that we should remove what we call the fourth wall tradition. We have to indulge the audience right away with the action on the stage. Why? Because we want the audience to be part of the action on the stage. We don't want them to feel that they are separated and the action that happens on the stage is just an illusion of reality. We have to plunge them into the action on the stage in order to, as I said, in order to create this cathartical element and purge the audience of their repressed feelings and their repressed desires. So best way to do this is by creating some devices like what we said, the pulsating lights and the oversized stage puppets and groans and other things. So in his famous book, The Theater and Its Double, he envisaged the fact that the truthful distillation of dreams were its taste of crime, its erotic obsessions, its savageness, its fantasies, its utopian sense of life and objects, even its cannibalism, come out not on an illusory make-believe, but an inner level. So what he did is that he tried to present life with its naked truth, with its naked facts, present it without fear, present even the taboos on the stage, present the savageness of life, the vehement presence of some of the factors, presenting human beings at their worst levels, without having in mind the what we call the decorum of the etiquette and the decorum of the stage. So building on that, the playwrights who appeared in the 60s and the 70s started to strip the stage from its basic elements, which is to teach with fun. If you remember very well that one of the aims of literature is to teach with fun. So the audience expect to resort to the stage in order to find kind of entertainment. But when they resort to the stage, especially after the Second World War, they started seeing, scenes of blood, scenes of cannibalism, scenes of rape, scenes of violence, scenes of indecent language. The function of these is what? The function of these is to shock the audience, to produce them with an everlasting sense of violence. It is not just to create the cathartic sense, as we are going to talk about that in Your Face Theater. We will see more of this in the coming theater. So they try to produce something that may last for a long period of time. It is not just by presenting them with entertaining thing, and then when the theater is over, when the play is up, the audience walk out and as if nothing happened. They want to create something that lasts a bit longer than that. We will see this more incarnated with In Your Face Theater that we will talk about later. So when questioned, like for example Edward Bond, when he presented his famous play Saved, and there was this scene of the child being stoned on the stage, most of the critics show their disgusting attitude toward that particular scene, and he said that violence exists around us. We are surrounded by violence. So I can talk about violence just like Jane Austen talks about romance, because romance was the marker of the day during Jane Austen's time, and violence is the marker of our day. So it would be unethical not to present it on the stage. So, taking into consideration what Karl Marx says when he says that literature is the mirror of life. So since life is violent, we have to mirror that on the stage. The other theater that we'd like to focus on is the feminist theater and the school of Karl Churchill. The 70s and the 80s of the past century witnessed the rise of feminist theater. And by feminist theater, we mean the plays that are majorly centered on female characters with little or no even a presence of male figures. The playwrights who adopted this kind of school wanted to envisage the world of females stripped from any male presence, or what we call the male gaze. And they wanted to present these female characters as interacting with each other, commenting on each other, envisaging their world purely from a feminist point of view, without the interference of any female or patriarchal institutions. The thing about Karl Churchill is that the plays that she presented Some of the critics considered her plays to be a kind of oxymoronic, let me call it like this, school that incarnates both feminism and anti-feminism. But what I want to say is her school was a kind of moderate, let me put it like this, moderate kind of feminism, because she was not with the practices and the methods of the feminist, because she believed that um, feminism and the methods that the feminists followed basically centered on patriarchy. So when they wanted to define what feminism is, they looked at what patriarchy is not, and then they defined what feminism is. So those feminists had always the patriarchy in their at their backhead, and they formulated their notions according to these perspectives. So she wanted them to generate views about feminism which are completely independent of any patriarchal presence. She wanted their world to look like an object, not a subject more than an object, because women, unfortunately, even with feminism, they still be viewed as objects, not as subjects, as more like actors, doers of the action, more than the recipients of the action. So, as I mentioned, she wanted them to build a world that is completely based on their feminist ideas, and she sees no difference. I mean, she doesn't see any kind of difference between having a woman who is, feminist or independent and being a mother at the same time, because the radical feminists believe that in order to achieve complete independence, the females have to divorce the world of males and live completely independent of the presence of males. So she believes that a woman can still be a mother and a wife, while she can still maintain her independence as female. So the last of these schools is in your face theater. This kind of theater was a radical break with much of the drama of the 90s. At its best, its aim was to use shock to awaken the moral responses of the audience. Its desire was no less than to help change society. In one of the interviews with Sarah Kane, she said that I got really sick of going to the theater and coming out of the theater, trying to find a play that will burn me out. That even when I leave the theater, I still have this burning out in me. What I did is that I watch a play, and with the moment I leave the theater, I feel nothing happened at all. And that is why she wanted to have this burning effect inside the audience, even when they leave the school, even when they leave the stage. When they leave the stage, they still have this sense of effect on them. So the term was a journalistic term, as a matter of fact, which was derived from sport. You know that sport, especially the American sport, is highly, recognized with its violence, with indecent language, with brutal actions, etc. So it's just like facing someone in the face and tell him in the face, using some bad expressions, using some low language, indecent expressions, etc. So the number of young people, playwrights, produced works that were seen as being deliberately aggressive, confrontational, and provocative. They want to provoke the audience, and we'll explain why they want to create this kind of provocation on the right of on the side of the audience. So key plays in the emergence of school include Anton Nielsen's Penetrator, Sarah Kane's Blasted, and some others. And these plays depicted scenes of rape, killing, cannibalism, stoning, etc. In-your-face theater is both a new sensibility and a series of specific theatrical devices. In terms of sensibility, these playwrights depict psychological and emotional extremes, some of which, such as sexual abuse or viciousness, are truly distressing. They instantly break taboos and use direct, powerful language, often with fast and furious dialogue. Their sensibility relish the idea of provocation. Why do they want to provoke the audience? As I said, they want to provoke the audience to make them believe that they are part of what's going on the stage. With the traditions of this theater, the playwrights try to include the audience as a member of the events that happened on the stage, of the action that happens on the stage. They don't want them to feel that they are alienated, that they are isolated. They want them to feel that they are part of this. And the reason is why, because these playwrights want them to experience what goes on the stage. And I will come back to this word experience later, because it's a significant word in the theater. So, as a series of theatrical techniques, in-your-face theater involves a stage language that emphasizes rawness, intensity, swearing, stage images that show acute pain or comfortless vulnerability, characterization that prefer complicit victims to innocent ones with no relief or a break. An example of this is Blasted, written by Sarah Kane. We see a male being raped on the stage, a character whose eyes were buckled out and then sucked and chewed and then thrown away, a child who is cannibalized at the end of the play, blood shedding on the stage, everything that gives the stage the sense of discomfort and the sense of provocation. If you remember, as a tradition of the theater, Horace said that in order to preserve the etiquette of theater, violent actions should be reported more than acted on the stage. Why? Because you remember that the aim of literature is to teach with fun. If we present these violent actions on the stage with this, vicious way and this indecent way, let me put it like this, audience will feel more provoked than entertained. But what these playwrights try to do is what? They try to break with this notion of theater, of being, a place of entertainment. They try to produce plays that are completely violent, and violence seems to be in the heart of these plays, to create this sense of discomfort on the part of the audience, and to provoke them. And as I said, to create this, burning effect in them, like Sarah Kane puts it. So, in-your-face theater depended on certain material conditions, mainly the ready availability of studio spaces, typical seating between 50 and 80 people, which would provide ideal conditions for the kind of experiential theater where audience members feel as if they were actively sharing the emotions being depicted by the actors. So, the stage itself has become really very narrow, and the audience feel that they are incarcerated, they are imprisoned there, and some of the actors even walk among the audience, and they try to shout or scream or produce some voices, and sometimes they are even killed among the audience. Why? Because if you remember that one of the traditions of the theater, that all the theater, since its presence, has been built on is the responses that the audience have toward the action on the stage. So what the audience do is that they build a bridge between them and the characters on the stage to create what Aristotle calls the element of identification, in order to be able to create catharsis. So the theater depends entirely on the responses of the audience. What these playwrights try to do is to break with this by creating an experiential element instead of responsive element. They want the audience to feel that they are part of this. They experience the same thing that happens on the stage, as if they were the actors, as if this happened to them They are not like isolated from the action on the stage. They are part of what goes on the stage. Because if they have this sense of experience, experience will last longer. If someone experiences something, this sense of what later we call, and some of the critics try to call it, trauma theater. Trauma theater or trauma plays. They want to traumatize the audience in order to create this sense of what? Of experience, and the experiential sense that will last longer. It is just not like just a small response that the audience have, and then when the play is over, this response will die out as soon as they leave the theater. They want them to experience the things that happen on the stage, and the best way to do this is by creating incarcerating theater, and they put the voice and the sound devices around them, and sometimes some of the actions even are acted among the audience themselves to make them feel that someone is killed among the audience, someone is being raped among the audience, someone is being cannibalized in front of the audience or among the audience, so that this effect will give them the sense that they are experiencing this. They are not watching it, but they are experiencing it, and this will last longer. This is all for my presentation on my class for today, guys. Wish all the best of luck, and thank you so much for listening, and I'm all ears to your questions now. Thank you, Dr. Amjad, for everything.
Thank you so much for your so impressive and interesting presentation, in fact, Dr. Harith, in which you highlighted all the major and most important focal and pivotal trends and schools of the postmodern theater, in fact. So thank you so much, and I hope all the attendees have really got interested in what you have said, and of course it opens the doors to even the MA and PhD students who are attending here with us to choose topics to write about them in concerning and regarding or in terms of their MA theses and PhD dissertations. So now I will just now make you the chat box in which you have now the door open for you to ask any questions that you like for a period, a span of time of 10 minutes. Okay, so here we go now. Now you can ask your questions. Please write down your questions in the chat box below. If you have any questions, please, we are so pleased to receive them, and Dr. Harith thankfully will answer your queries. Okay, we'll wait for 2-3 minutes. Any questions, please?
Please, Hussein, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Ali. Okay, Hussein, you can ask, please. You can place your question here. Write down your question in the chat box, please, Hussein. Hussein, please. Don't use the mic. Don't use the mic, please, Hussein. Write down your question in the chat box, please.
One of the questions was to clarify the trauma theater. The trauma theater, as I mentioned, is you remember very well that experience trauma, as Caruth defined the term, is a kind of revisiting of a sad event or a sad situation that someone has experienced and being haunted by this event. So in order to create this sense of of haunting aspect, the writers and playwrights try to, as I mentioned previously, try to act violent actions and involve the audience with these violent actions in order to make them experience that thing. So when they leave, they will be haunted with this, and they will be revisited by this by these images and these shocking images they see on the stage, and that's why they will have have that every now and then. Is that clear?
Okay, Dr. Harith, please. So the question of Hussein is stating that he is inquiring of the difference, or if there are any differences between the cruel theater. Dr. Harith, are you still with us?
Yeah, but I couldn't find the question.
Okay, the question says that Hussein is asking that if there are any differences between the cruel theater and the in-your-face theater.
Yes, yes, there's a, as I mentioned, in-your-face theater made, made use of different kinds of theaters. Epic theater, they want to have this sense of instruction on the part of the audience. They want them to feel that they are being taught, that they are being given a lesson, that they are part of what's going on the stage. Theater of cruelty, as a matter of fact, just focused on presenting these violent actions on the stage, but the intention is completely different, because Antonin Artaud felt that the theater should be a place where the audience are confronted with their most dangerous fears and sense of pain. But why? Because he wants to create this sense of catharsis. While the theater of the, in your face theater, they don't want to create this sense of catharsis. They want them to have this repression inside of them and to continue having this, because once this repression is released out, the audience will feel relieved, and then the demanded result will not be in their favor. Is that clear?
Okay, Dr. Harith, another question says that if there is any overlapping or intermingling between those schools of postmodern theater. Mm-hmm. So another similar questions, related questions, that says that is there any, let us say, is there any one school that is getting benefit of the principles and rules of the other school of theater?
Yes, as I said, all of them. All of these schools made use of different kinds of theaters, and majorly theater of cruelty, epic theater, and absurd theater. So in theater of menace, for example, they made a great use of theater of the absurd. They are completely the playwrights who wrote in this tradition, based their theatrical traditions on theater of the absurd theater. That's why you find that fragmented language, extensive use of what we call pauses and silences. Characters are mysterious. The plot is, there is no plot. The action itself is cyclic, etc.
Okay, other questions, please? Is there any other question? I think there is. Okay, Dr. Ahmed Hamid, welcome here, Dr. Ahmed, says that when we can find a clear-cut separation among the modern, postmodern, and contemporary literature. Is there any clear-cut or crystal-clear separation among those three, Dr. Harith?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
As we mentioned previously, modern theater is characterized by its use of realism. High modernism by its revolt against realism. Postmodernism by its reliance on both schools, realism and modernism, because they don't want to retain, they don't want to lose any of the characteristics of these schools. That's why they present their audiences, as I mentioned previously, with multiple realities, with wrestling experience, as Howard Barker called it in his plays.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Harith. There is another question by Dr. Amr, which says, what is the place, what is the location or the position of political theater nowadays? And he says then, in the second part of the question, if Bertolt Brecht is still our contemporary?
Mhm. No, he died long time ago.
Of course not. He is not a contemporary. But what is the position of political theater nowadays? The
Political
first
theater.
leg of the question.
You know, political theater emerged during the 80s of the past century, especially with Edward Bond and even with Carl Churchill and Harold Pinter. They questioned the policies of the United Kingdom, especially during the time of Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady. They questioned her, her policies and the things that she practiced and the things that she promised. But nowadays, as a matter of fact, this theater started to wane because people no longer focus on politics, because politics has become very clear for people. I mean, political theater, emerged with George Bernard Shaw, and in all his plays, he presented the politician as an antagonist because he believes that one of the things that people should really be aware of and get rid of is politicians, and that is why he presented them in an antagonistic way.
Okay, Doctor, thank you again. Dr. Ghazwan, the head of our department, is asking you, having an inquiry indeed, which says, is there anything which is called, or let's say, a drama entity, a postmodern drama entity? And if yes, how can we define it?
Well, as I said, it's very difficult to define this entity. Why? Because each play is a composite of different elements. Those who specialize in drama, when they read a play, they find elements of, that literature itself, and especially the postmodern literature, is characterized with what we call intertextuality. So you find that each play is a composite of different theatrical elements that are used by. That's why you don't find one independent entity of a drama, because each play, as I said, is characterized by different elements which were taken from the previous plays.
This is what we can call bastir, okay, and this is which is joining or copy pasting. It's pasting, which is a very advanced type of intertextuality. It's pasting so many types of dramas at the same time and the same text, and this is really what characterizes the postmodern theater. In fact, okay, there is no clear-cut entity, okay. So there's an overlapping. So the final question from Ali Kubati, your MA student, Dr. Harith. He is inquiring of the situation of the in-your-face theater in the Muslim countries. How do you see? How do you see this situation of the position of this theater, the in-your-face in the Muslim countries?
Well, let me tell you something. Part of Blasted, the play that Sarah Kane wrote. I'm sorry if I take a bit of time to explain this, because this is very important. She said that I had in mind to write about a traditional play, and that's why she started her play Blasted with a very traditional scene of two lovers in five-star hotel in Leeds. And then she said that after I finished the first act, I was watching TV, and all of a sudden I changed the channel, and then there was this Muslim lady from Bosnia who appeared in front of the TV, and she was crying and was asking for help. And she said, "Please save us. We are being raped every single moment, and no one even pays attention to what's going on in Bosnia because we are Muslim ladies." Anyway, so she said that I could not even stand the idea of completing my play, and all of a sudden, at the end of the act number 2, or scene number 2, sorry, the entire situation, the entire scene has changed. Instead of having a five-star hotel in Leeds, we started having a place in Bosnia where a Serbian army broke into the scene and tortured the main character, and he wanted to rape Kate, but she escaped from the window of the bathroom. And the entire situation has completely changed. So she wanted to draw the attention of people toward the massacres and the rape that happened in that country, Bosnia. Is that clear?
Okay, of course, so clear, crystal clear. Thank you so much, Dr. Harith. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your time. Thank you again for the very impressive and really so clear, let's say, a presentation for today. Your session was really amazing. And now, thank you so much. And we all thank you here to accept our invitation to be our speaker for today. So thank you from the deepest core of our hearts, Dr. Harith. And we wish to meet you up again in so much more, of course, fruitful cooperations and coming webinars. So thank you very much.
You are